A dying and increasingly problematic mother, one of the worst military misadventures in Canadian history, a horrifying journey of mental illness, experiencing the travails of East Africa, and exploring a part of our north where few have dared to go. 5 fascinating topics, 5 fascinating authors, all nominated for the RBC Taylor Prize. And we welcome them all to TVO in alphabetical order. Plum Johnson, author of They Left Us Everything. David O'Keefe, author of One Day in August, the untold story behind Canada's tragedy at Dieppe. Barbara Taylor, author of The Last Asylum, a memoir of madness in our times. M.G. Vasanji, author of And Home Was Keriakou, a memoir of East Africa. And Kathleen Winter, author of Boundless, Tracing Land and Dream in a New Northwest Passage. And we are always happy to welcome the Taylor Prize nominees to TVO. We always are in a bit of an odd situation because as we sit here taping this, you have all been nominated, but no one knows who's won. By the time this airs, everybody will have known who's won. So play along with the fiction, even though you're all writing nonfiction here, okay? Let's go through these books one by one. Plum Johnson, I'm going to start with you. There was a sign outside your mother's house of a gun aiming straight at your heart and saying, "Never mind the dog, beware of the owner." How much does that sum up your mother?
It sums it up pretty well.
I'm going to read a little excerpt of the book here, and then we'll go from there. "The person I have become has shocked me," you write. "It feels as though the last 20 years have leached out my patience, my empathy, my compassion, the best parts of me, until I feel unrecognizable, a person I don't like very much. I didn't much like Mum either. Her cranky, grievous war against my aging and my inability to cope decimated our relationship. It's possible this is what's making the loss bearable for me now. If she died when I was younger, when I still remembered how wonderful she was, perhaps grief would be overwhelming me." Can you talk a bit about the conflicting emotions you started to feel with somebody who gave you life and therefore I guess you feel you ought to love, but as the quote indicates, was hard to love?
Well, yes, but you have to remember that this all came at the end of, a lengthy aging process. And I think it's something that a lot of us baby boomers are going through right now because we have this long period of elder care and let's face it, old people get cranky.
Old people get cranky. Boy, and the way you describe it in the book, this is, that's her, eh?
That's Mum.
That's her. When would that have been taken?
In 1960s.
1960s.
Yeah.
She looked like Good Time Charlie at the time, right?
She was a fascinating person.
Can you say that about a woman? She was a Good Time Charlie?
Sure you can.
I don't know.
She was a fascinating person and a wonderful, mother. But it's the end game that really the book is about, because we went through all of that. We had 20 years of elder care between Dad and Mum, so part of it was timing, because she came at the end of that and we were all exhausted, my brothers and I.
She was miserable by the end, wasn't she?
She didn't like it much, and I keep reminding myself that old people are really young people just trapped in old bodies, and so it's not surprising that we all get cranky, but she was a dominant personality and it made it extremely difficult to deal with. We had this combative relationship at the end. Sad.
After your mother died, you and your siblings all got together, you go to the house, right. And you drew the short straw, right? You're the one, you moved in, and you had to go through 60 years of stuff. Right. What was that like?
Well, it turned into the book, really. So I think what was happening sort of subconsciously is that I was drawn to reconnect with Mum through that process of cleaning out the house. And the things that we found were fascinating, taught us a lot about who our parents were, and then eventually, I found out more of who I am through that process. But it was a profound journey, and I think a lot of us are going through that right now. I'm
going to do my best not to give away the endings of all of your books, although, David, I will have to give away the ending of your book because it's so integral to the story. But let's get close here, Plum, okay? You ask some really fascinating questions during the course of the book. Am I my mother's biographer? Do all daughters become their mother's biographers, taking their lessons, passing them along to the next generation? You've asked the questions. What answers did you come up with?
I think that happens whether we like it or not. I think we pass it on through our relationships with our own daughters. So I think it's something we have to struggle with, especially if you have, sometimes you have a relationship with the mother-daughter thing is complicated, and sometimes you have a relationship that works well just because of different characteristics that you're born with, and sometimes you have to, it's more of a challenge.
Quote from your book, "I used to think parents should clean up their own mess before they depart this world. Now I just think the opposite." Can you describe a bit of that metamorphosis as to why you changed your mind on that?
Because we found so many fascinating things that I think might have been cleared out before we got there. You know, we found over 2,000 letters, for example, that were in garbage bags in the what we called the trunk room. And a lot of those, most of those, had been written by my mother over her lifetime. So she didn't keep a diary. I kept looking for a diary, hoping for one. We never found one. But letter writing was her form of keeping a diary. And so I learned all this from all this original source material. I learned a lot about more about what she was like before I met her.
You were the one sibling of 5, is that right?
Yes.
You were the one sibling of 5 who actually spent the most time with her during her most difficult years.
No.
No?
I wouldn't say that's true, because my youngest brother lived in Toronto as well, and helped equally.
Okay. The premise of all this was heading towards, and yet your mother always complimented the kids who live far away,
yes, sure.
and never you.
or Victor.
Or Victor.
I mean,
so what's with that?
Isn't that funny? She used to say, mothers love their children, love those children best who live farthest away.
How does that make any sense, though?
It doesn't make sense.
Was she?
She just meant, I think she just meant, you know, sometimes when you're together too much, you don't appreciate each other as much.
Well, that's it.
She was just being
Even though she
sarcastic.
never said it, do you think that she actually did appreciate your regular visits and the care
Sure
and
she
attention?
did.
She
Oh,
did.
sure she did.
But she couldn't tell you that.
She was just lashing out at the closest thing. I think we all do that.
Well, let me ask the obvious question that I've held off for until now, which is, Victoria, which is supposed to be your name.
Yes.
Victoria, why are you named Plum?
But see, I found that out by reading the letters. I didn't know the story before. So I found this letter that Dad had written to Mum during the war. He was still on a ship in the Far East, and she was giving birth to me in Virginia. And he wrote, he was British, he wrote his Southern Belle wife and said, I think we should name her Victoria. And Mother wrote back and said, that's far too British sounding, but if you must name her after a plum, choose a sweeter variety and it'll be sugar plum. And that's
And it stuck.
so in the South, I still have relatives or I used to, they're dying off. They've mostly died off now, but they used to call me Sugar Plum. Yeah.
There we are. Okay, they left us everything. Plum Johnson. Continuing in alphabetical order, we go through the Taylor Prize nominees for literary nonfiction. David O'Keefe, it's up to you now. The subtitle of your book talks about the untold story of Dieppe, and before we get to the untold story, I think we got to do the told story first so that we've got the background in place. August 19th, 1942, Canadian troops invade Dieppe in France in an effort to take it back from the Germans. What happened during that 9-hour ordeal?
Well, it turned out to be the single worst day in Canadian military history and launched one of the greatest mysteries in Canadian history. 907 Canadians were killed. I mean, when you think about that, that's about 7.5 times more than we lost over 12 years in Afghanistan. We lost that in one morning. And as a result, we weren't able to effectively accomplish the objectives we set out to do that day, although for many years we didn't really know exactly what those objectives were. And for years, this has gone down as not only the biggest mystery, but one of the greatest controversies of the Second World War and also in Canadian military history.
We should remember 900 killed in a country a third the size that it is now.
Yeah.
So that's an even more disproportionate loss. How many wounded as well?
You're looking about wounded and captured probably about another 2,500. So you're talking about the vast majority of the 5,000 men that hit the beach that day ended up either killed, wounded, or captured. And of course, this was the first time that we'd really done anything significant as Canadians in the war. So you
In
can
World War II?
imagine, yeah, in World War II. So you can imagine what this was like. And also, the kids who were there, and I say kids because most of them were 18 to 25, they came from all reaches of the country. And so units were, represented right from Ontario right across to Alberta. You had corps troops from the Maritimes and from BC, and French and English, so everybody was in it together.
We should remind everybody, of course, Canada declared war in September of 1939. Yep. It's now August 1942. So our kids were kind of champing at the bit to get in there, weren't they?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, some of the veterans that I've interviewed, that's the main thing that comes across. Number one is, we were sitting there for 2 years. We just wanted to get at them. And sure enough, on August 19th, they did.
What was the stated, at the time, purpose of this invasion?
Well, the stated purpose at this time was basically to test the defenses. In other words, we really hadn't done anything much along the Channel coast for that time, so now it was time to get into action, give the Canadians a bit of experience. And then, of course, after that, there were all these other excuses that were offered up, particularly after the success of D-Day 2 years later. They said, oh, well, Dieppe was nothing more than a test for Normandy. Or we were trying to placate the Russians on the Eastern Front, or in some ways try to support them.
So there were all these other theories, but you actually came up with another one. Hold off, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Whose idea was the Dieppe invasion, do you know?
Well, it comes out of naval intelligence. As a matter of fact, it comes out of the office of John Godfrey, who was the director of naval intelligence in 1942. And from the research that I've been able to do and uncover, is that in January of 1942 there was a crisis looming. And they were starting raiding programs in Norway, which they had accomplished already, and also they had some for France. And so in January 1942 is the first time where we actually see Dieppe come on the radar screen, if you will, for planning purposes. But everything was put on hold until 2 other raids failed to accomplish the objectives they hoped they would accomplish. And then suddenly in April, that's when the planning went in overdrive for Dieppe.
There is a James Bond angle to this story. What is it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's fascinating. This is one of the most daunting parts of the entire journey for me, was coming to terms with the fact that a commando unit that was raised specifically to make its debut in this raid, which later I discovered was the central reason for it, was raised by Ian Fleming, who at the time was the personal assistant to John Godfrey, the director of naval intelligence.
And Ian Fleming was?
And Ian Fleming was became the famous author of James Bond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'll forgive me for saying so. I actually didn't think he was the most fascinating character in the book. The most fascinating character in the book, I thought, was, here's this name again, Victoria Adelaide Clementine Louise Grafen zu Castelrudenhausen. Why was she significant?
Well, actually, she was sort of a footnote, but the young commander, 21-year-old Miles Huntington, or I should say Herbert Oliver Huntington Whiteley, was the 21-year-old who led Fleming's commandos in Dieppe. Well, he was killed 2 years later just outside of Dieppe after the liberation, and so the only person we could track down in his family was his brother. And so we went to see him, Miles Huntington Whiteley, who lives in London, and as we were interviewing him in his house, you would walk into his house and you would walk upstairs, and my God, it was like a museum. And when we finally arrived in the drawing room upstairs where we did the interview, I was looking at the family portraits. And he said, well, there's my grandfather, Stanley Baldwin, the 3-time Prime Minister of England. And then I looked up and I saw this painting of a very young queen. And it looked like Victoria. Now, I've never seen a painting of a young Queen Victoria, so I had to ask. And he just looked at me and quickly said, my wife's relations. And that was it.
But go on.
And then she just appeared in the room and just swept in and swept everybody away. And it turns out that she is the great-great-great-granddaughter of Queen Victoria, who was then the great-granddaughter of Tsar Nicholas, of Kaiser Wilhelm, and of course,
King George V.
You got it. So standing there in front of me was the direct descendant of the origins of World War I, if you will.
Unbelievable.
It was remarkable.
Thanks to the movie The Imitation Game, we know a lot about Enigma. We know about the efforts to crack that code. And there's actually, as I read in your book, a connection to all of that in Whitby, Ontario, an hour east of this studio. What is it?
Well, that's where they have what we know as Camp X. And Camp X, one of the big secrets of Camp X wasn't just the secret agent training that they were doing there, but the fact that it was part of what we call the Ultra Signals Intelligence Network. So they were relaying some of the most important messages of the entire war through Camp X outside of Whitby as well. And part of this, of course, has to go into the research I did about Ian Fleming and what his real role was and whether he was actually at Camp X and trained at Camp X, etc. But again, it all goes back to cryptography.
And your suggestion is that after doing all of the research and looking at the hundreds of thousands of documents, that this actually wasn't a war or wasn't an invasion about all of the conventional reasons. It had more to do with intelligence.
It did. Yeah, it did. It was about cryptography. It was something that at first I really didn't suspect could really be true. I mean, when I found the first document, this was 20 years ago, And it took about 15 years for the research to unfold, largely because everything was classified at the time. So I had to wait for the protracted release of material. And at first it was kind of like getting a very big jigsaw puzzle piece, but the rest of them weren't in the lid. So it took a while for the rest of the pieces to come in. And then suddenly the pattern started to form where they actually would put on not just raids, but other operations that were intentionally dressed up using the concept of overcompensation of allocation of resources to cover up what their true intent was. So in other words, when it all gets down to it at the end, this was what the British would call a pinch raid. In other words, the cryptographers at Bletchley Park were stymied when the Germans introduced a new 4-rotor Enigma. They desperately needed the material, and they needed to have it pinched quickly. The problem was that their pinch raids before, although incredibly successful in the way they were doing it, were tipping off the Germans. So now they had to come up with something different. And in this case, it was dressing up a raid with 5,000 men, ideally to be able to get this material in their hands. But of course, at the other, you could check off a whole lot of other boxes by putting out a raid like this as well.
So you, as a historian, having looked at all of this now, have to make a decision. You have to come to a conclusion as to whether or not it was worth more than 3,000 casualties to get whatever intelligence information they gleaned from that operation. What have you concluded?
Well, the tough part is that they didn't get it. They got very close. But when you think about the importance, and I've said this before, I certainly think it was worth the risk. In other words, to put on an operation to pinch the material that you needed because of what cryptography brings to the war effort. But at the same time, I'm not sure if it was worth the cost. And I'm not trying to hedge things here. It's just the fact that there had to have been a better way of accomplishing this than coming up with the type of plan that they actually did.
You met Ron Beale.
Yes.
Veteran. I think. Is there a picture of him at the back of the book?
I believe there is, yeah.
Yeah. Let me get that picture up there he is right here. Who am I going to show this to? Greg, right here.
Yeah.
This fella on this page here. You went and visited him. Mm-hmm. You told him the new information and the new theory that you were advancing as to why this thing happened.
And it was the day it changed my life.
How did he react?
Ron was typical of many of the kids who went off on that day. 18 to 20, I think he was 19 at the time. And, he landed on Blue Beach, watched his friends ripped apart in front of his eyes. He spent the next 2.5 years in a prisoner of war camp and then came back and for 70 years was trying to figure out why. And of course, nothing ever made sense. Now, sometimes the irrational may be the rational answer at the end of the day, but for him and for me personally, there was always something that was nagging. So eventually, yes, we took what we call the Gretzky files. In other words, out of the 150,000 pages of material, we had like 500 gold pages. And we sat down with them and we went and we interviewed him and we said, okay, tell us your story. What was Dieppe for? There was no reason for it. We were used as guinea pigs. We were thrown away on that beach. Really, we need to show you something. And for the next 3.5 hours, we took him through every single page. Now, you have to remember, he's 92. His legs don't work, but his mind is really sharp, and he's been studying this probably as much as any historian has ever looked at this for his own personal reasons. And at the end of it, he simply broke down. He could not believe it at the end, what he was seeing. And he was able to put 2 and 2 together, and sort of like me, all the pieces started to fall into place once you see the structure of it. All the questions that we've had about Dieppe, why was it done in this way, now started to fall into place. And for him, we put him back in front of the camera for the documentary we were making about this at the time. And he just said, look, he said, it doesn't matter if we didn't get what we were after. He said, it was a genuine purpose behind this raid. And this wasn't just something that was tossed on. You take a look at it, half of the entire raiding force is involved. Half the casualties, more than half the casualties, are taken in pursuit of this objective. And he said, look, it doesn't matter if we didn't get it. Just knowing that there was a genuine purpose, now I can die in peace. And
that's the quote on the back of the book.
Yeah.
Now I can die in peace. Now I know what my friends died for. Great. Okay, continuing our discussions with the RBC Taylor Prize nominees. Now, your name's on this thing. That's a bit odd, isn't it, Barbara Taylor? Did they name the prize after you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's bring the quote up first. Yours has been a harrowing read, I have to say. Here's you in your book. I had always been unhappy. Moving from Canada to London, age 21, I had thought to leave my unhappiness behind me, but it traveled with me. And in my late 20s, it took a frightening turn. I became horribly anxious, unable to sleep, plagued by mysterious bodily symptoms. In 1981, when I was 31, I broke down entirely for a time and decided to seek help. The Last Asylum is the story of my madness years. Let's get into this. We're going to start by trying to find out why you thought you were unhappy. So, of course, psychiatrist that I am, I need to ask about your parents. Who were your parents, Barbara?
My parents, I grew up in Saskatoon, and my parents were both lawyers. My mother became a judge and was later chairwoman of the first Saskatchewan Human Rights Commission. My father was a labor lawyer and a constitutional lawyer. They were both people to be reckoned with.
Your father ran for the leadership of the Saskatchewan NDP.
He did indeed.
He was a big deal.
He did, yes.
Well, they were both a big deal, actually.
Yes, yes, they were. They were people of principle and determination, and there was much about them that was very admirable.
So it obviously raises questions as you read the book about how does somebody who comes from a home with two such impressive parents go through such torment? Did you ever get any good answers to that?
Well, the book tries to answer it. I mean, whether it's good answers, I'll let the reader judge. Of course, families are very complicated phenomena, and parents with the very best of intentions for their children don't always do as well by them as they would like to do, and that was my story.
Your parents are no longer with us.
That's right.
Which I presume gave you some license to peel back the curtain in a way that you couldn't have done if they were alive, fair to say?
Yes.
Because you really peel that curtain back, Barbara. I got to tell you, I mean, you talk a great deal about the very private lives of both of your parents, and I wonder whether you, any skittishness or reticence about doing that?
I don't feel that's entirely the case. I mean, there were areas of reticence in writing the book. I told the story I needed to tell in order to tell my story, and the aspects of their lives that I thought were not germane to my history, I didn't include. I think it's very important to say that I don't want to suggest that I was a victim of my parents. In many respects, I take great pride in them and in what they tried to do with their lives. I think that they also experienced great pain from my illness, my period of illness, and would have done a great deal to have tried to prevent it. The tragedy of mental illness is that good intentions, even love, are sometimes not enough.
I'm going to follow up on this issue of peeling back the curtain because, of course, in very torturous detail, you tell us an enormous amount about your drug problems, your alcohol problems, your ravenous sexual appetites at the time. And again, I feel I know you way too well. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I just know so much more about you than you know about me. And that, I don't know if that makes me uncomfortable or what. Did you worry about that at all when you were writing this?
What about not knowing the inner lives of my readers? That I didn't give much thought to. I understand.
You know where I'm going.
I understand your question. I made a decision to tell the story. There were points at which I would say to myself, I can't talk about that. And then the story would fall apart. And I would think, I have to. Either I tell the story or I give up and I don't tell the story. And having made the decision to do it, which I don't regret at all, I had to follow through on it. There's nothing in the story about which I feel any shame. I wish it hadn't been so. I'm deeply grateful to having made a recovery from it. But so I'm a historian, you know, and I became a historian of my own life. And like David, either you tell the story or you don't.
What's different from David is he didn't have to put his kishkas out on the table, though, in order to tell the story. He's telling other people's story. You are telling your own deeply personal story. I mean, you keep asking yourself, why do I feel so filthy? That's a hard question to ask about oneself. Again, do you think you know now why?
I do, and I also think it's very important to say that many other people suffer from this. The symptoms I described were not unusual ones. I'm not in any way trying to describe something which I regard as extraordinary. And if other people can see even elements of what I'm describing, in their own experiences, and feel in any way that, maybe it's less shameful than they thought, then I'm very pleased about that. It's also very important to say that it's not just my story. I very deliberately set the story inside the much larger one of the history of the asylum.
Sure. It's a bit unfair of me to ask, what was the answer to the question, why do I feel so filthy? Because, that was years and years of therapy that eventually got you to the answer. But can you, for the purposes of a television broadcast, can you help us with it?
Guilt. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, which is what that was, is driven by unconscious guilt.
Over what?
Well,
it's an hour show, right?
It's an hour show. You get a panel of psychologists, psychiatrists, psychoanalysts on here, and we'll talk about it.
Okay, but do you have some sense about why at age 31, was there a trigger or something that happened where you just broke down?
I ran out of energy. In order to fend off the breakdown that happened to me, people build up very strong defenses, and I was completing PhD, which is a very demanding exercise, and I simply ran out of psychic energy. Everything started, and also I went into psychoanalysis, to which I attribute my recovery, which proved a very demanding process.
Well, this was every day, right? You went every day.
Yes, for the first while, no, and then very soon I was in a classical 5 days a week psychoanalysis.
And I'm interested that you say you attribute that for a lot of your recovery, because your relationship with your therapist is alternatively appalling, scary, unhealthy. Shall I go on? It was all of that and more, wasn't it?
Never unhealthy. I want to correct you. It was very stormy.
Stormy, okay.
But, serious mental illness is a war of self against self. And anybody who gets between the combatants is going to come under heavy fire. And that's what he did. He, in a sense, threw himself into the fray, and he really got it in the neck from me. And had he not stuck by me, I really don't think I would be here today.
Did you have or ask for his permission to include your conversations in the book?
I didn't, but I'm very pleased to tell you he didn't know anything about the writing of the book. When he read it, he wrote me a wonderful letter, and he said, "They're amazingly accurate."
Well, I was going to ask you that, because it really reads like a transcript, a lot of your, and you obviously didn't take notes while you were doing it, so you're going by memory.
No, I kept journals.
Oh, you did, okay.
And certainly, it's a combination of what I have from my journals. I couldn't have written my book without my journals. As I say, I'm a historian. They were my evidence. But I was remembering. I have very powerful memories of those sessions. So.
You don't name him, though?
No.
Obviously on purpose, but how come?
Of course.
Why didn't you want to identify him?
It would be fair to him. He deserves to remain anonymous. I didn't ask his permission to do it, and he still practices. It wouldn't have been proper.
But you're a success story. You're, in a way, a tribute to his good work.
Absolutely.
So why wouldn't you want to name him?
He's very pleased. He didn't want any attention.
Okay.
So.
At a certain point, you eventually end up in, I don't know that we call these things this anymore, but you call it this, an asylum.
Yes.
Do we still call them that?
Well, they're not here anymore.
Okay, well, we have psychiatric hospitals now.
Well, yes and no. Most of the big ones, I'm sorry, I wouldn't want to speak in detail about the situation in Canada, but...
this is happening in the United Kingdom.
This is happening in the United Kingdom, and the old mental hospitals, well, the new ones indeed, the large ones, are closed down in favor of so-called community care.
You said when you got to the asylum, "I found my home."
Yes.
What was it going on there that made it feel like home?
I felt safe.
Safe from?
Myself. I was killing myself. And I had, in addition to my psychoanalysis, I want to say I had the most fantastic help all during this period. And I had help from my analyst. I had help from a wonderful circle of friends. And then when booze and pills became a huge problem, I also got help from a psychiatrist who was a really exceptional person. And it was under her care that I went into the mental hospital. And I remained in psychiatric institutions both as an inpatient and a day patient under her care, continuing my analysis for nearly 4 years. But it was her judgment call that I went into the hospital at a time when I was becoming homeless, and that had thrown me into the most extraordinary panic, and I was trying to deal with it by self-medicating with booze and pills. And she took me in, and I knew that I wasn't going to kill myself in a hospital. I felt safe, I felt looked after. It wasn't an easy place to be, but it was where I needed to be.
Are you all better now?
Do we all feel all better? I mean, if everybody else here feels all better, then I feel all better. I say in the book at the beginning, I'm just as crazy as we need to be to deal with modern life. It requires a pretty strong element of craziness in most of us, I think. I have a very good life. I have a very good life. I'm married, I have a wonderful job, I have a wonderful family, so.
But you are as mentally healthy as the average person now.
I don't know, because I'm only me.
You're only me. Is it the kind of thing where one fears a recurrence?
I did for years. I don't anymore. I did for years. I mean, it's impossible to go through what I went through without knowing what can happen. And but writing this book has, in a way, I'm not trying to claim that it's been a therapeutic exercise, but it's set up the most fantastic conversations for me. And I think that if I was deliberately setting myself a test of my sanity, probably publishing, I did say to friends, I must still be crazy. Look at what the book I'm writing. But it's been a fantastic experience. So.
Good. Well, you seem great. So
Thank
good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Continuing our conversations with the RBC Taylor Prize nominees for literary nonfiction, M.G. Vasanji, good to see you again. You were only on this program a few months ago talking about this book. At the time, we didn't know you were going to be nominated, and yet here you are.
So I wonder what you'll ask me now.
We're going to do a completely different interview from where we did last time. No, forgive me, but some of it's going to overlap because we talked about your book before, and we're going to talk about it again. For those who didn't see the interview, where's Kiriakou?
It's a neighborhood in Dar es Salaam where I grew up, east coast of Africa, and sort of a poor, semi-African, semi-Indian neighborhood.
And you came from there?
Yeah, I was born in Nairobi, but we moved to Kariako, or the border of Kariako, when my father died.
And you left 30 years ago for Canada. It's 30 years now, right?
I left for the United States first.
Oh, okay.
So I spent 8 years in the U.S., and then I came here.
And then here.
In 1978.
One of the fascinating themes of your book that we want to revisit is this notion of belonging and where someone belongs. And you clearly have a foot in Tanzania, where you were born, but you've been in Canada now for a very long time. So I want to get a better sense about the tug from the old country versus how much at home you feel in the new country. Help us out with that.
Well, I think, these kinds of questions one used to ask in the 70s, about who are you? And, you thought there's only one answer. There's no one answer. You don't have to be one or the other. So, I feel totally at home in Toronto. I, engage with my neighborhood, talk to my neighbors, complain if there's something nasty turns up. I do mow my lawn, shovel snow. Pay taxes, so brought up 2 kids in Toronto. But when I go to Tanzania, it pulls at the heart. And more recently, I discovered India, which is my ancestral home, and that also does something to me. But I live with it. I feel richer that way because those are experiences that are a part of me. I'm not going to fight them. But when I was younger, of course, I used to. When I was a student in the U.S., I always, and everyone used to talk about identity, in the 1970s with Erickson and so on. And you thought, I have to be one or the other. Who am I? It doesn't matter. You are what you are.
No, I hear you.
Maybe one day you are one thing, the next day you are another.
But when you say it tugs at the heart, when you're back in Africa, when you leave Canada, do you feel an absence in the heart in the way that you might
Not in
not
the heart,
otherwise?
maybe in the mind.
So there's a distinction.
There's a distinction, yes. I don't know where it comes from. I don't try to analyze that part. I just live with what I have in me. I don't try to rationalize anything. And of course, I know that many Canadians who are very generous in their way, but are also very they get hurt. When you tell them, I went to Tanzania and I felt at home in many ways, and they feel at hurt. You don't like Canada. As of course I like it. I live here. I contribute to it. But this is what it is.
But maybe they get ticked off at you because they want you to feel the same sense of absence in the heart when you leave Canada as when you leave Tanzania.
But you see, that Canada is old Canada. The new Canada is different. There are many people like me.
Of course.
And there are people who come here, later than I did, and they buy houses in Ireland, they buy houses in Portugal, so they have their hearts, part of their hearts or souls or whatever elsewhere too. So Toronto is a different place. So many people who are hurt, of course, I think of them as the old Canadians, whereas I belong to a new Canada, which we are defining still.
Okay, when you go, can I say home? When you go back home to Tanzania?
Well, yeah, in some degree. When I come to Toronto, I also feel I'm coming home.
You also feel coming home. Okay,
Yes.
Interesting. But when you go back there, do they regard you as one of them, or are you that Canadian guy?
No, I think it depends on how you go there. There are some people who, of course, will walk around with a bottle of water and their fancy shoes and sunglasses and so on. Then, of course, people will laugh at you. And same thing with when you go to India. You start acting like that, and people say, you're a foreigner. But when I go to either place, I try very hard not to look different. Of course, the people, they can tell to some degree, right? But I just talk the language, and if they think I'm a foreigner, I complain. I say, what do you think? I come from Dar es Salaam. I come from Uhuru Street. And that kind of gives you an identity that people are pleased that that you think like that. And I'll give you an example. One day I landed in Dar es Salaam airport, and I was waiting to go to the immigration counter. Now, when I was a kid, the immigration counter, we were terrified of that, right? Because those guys were bureaucrats of the old school. So I was waiting there, and finally my friend, who's also from Toronto, he got his visa, and I went to the guy, and he told me in Swahili, what were you waiting for? I won't speak in Swahili. I said, I was waiting for my friend. He paused. He was a young guy. He said, where did you learn your Swahili? I said, in Uhuru Street. And he said, the word hongera, which means congratulations. Because the way I said Uhuru Street is, I said Uhuru Street. That's how you would say in Swahili. In Canada, in Toronto, I would say, I live on Uhuru Street. So there's a difference. How you say it,
the emphasis was on a different syllable. Okay.
Yes, and he was pleased. He was saying congratulations. I don't know what congratulations for what, but he was happy.
But how different is the neighborhood today from the one you left all those years ago?
Well, it's like anyone who goes back to Newfoundland or wherever. Everything looks smaller. Yeah, that happens to everyone when you go back to your hometown. But it's also more crowded. And
how about religiously?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Are you trying to talk about Islam?
Well, you did mention in the book that you
there are more mosques.
More mosques, and you hear the call to prayer all the time.
More Christian evangelists from Canada and the U.S. So everyone is trying to do their own magic. Promising healing and so on. So that's a bit disturbing, because once you have those elements that come in, then the tolerance goes away. Because when I was growing up, you had the azan from the mosque, and you had these bhajans from the sort of the Khoja prayer house, and you had, and people lived, they was okay. Now they say, oh, they're making a noise. I say, you lived here for 70 years, now you're making a
Let me ask you finally.
Well, that's what happens.
I'll ask you finally the stereotypical Canadian traveling question, which is, do you wear a Canadian flag on your lapel or on your backpack or anything like that when you're in Tanzania?
No, I never wear a Canadian flag. I think I feel very suspicious of people who do that. But I'll give you another story. I was in India once, in Shimla. We were taking a small train going up the hills. And there were two girls sitting across from me. They were very nice girls. They were eating the sandwiches and throwing things, looking after their garbage and so on. And they didn't sound Australian. They didn't sound British. And because of the way they behaved, I know they are not Americans. I thought they must be Canadians. But where is the flag? I couldn't find a flag. And then finally, after about half an hour, and we spoke, I came from Kingston, they went to Queen's University and so on. And then finally, they started talking to some of the women in the train. And then they brought out their pins. And they started, I said, no, these are true Canadians.
There you go. Kathleen, you get the prize for having waited 45 minutes before you get to say your first word, so congratulations.
W's are used to that.
That's right. Sadly, we're in alphabetical order here, so you've had to wait a very long time. Had it always been a dream of yours to go way, way, way up north?
I never in a million years thought I would find myself there physically. Mentally, I had read a lot about the far north, and to be able to actually go there wasn't a dream come true in that I really hadn't dreamed that it would happen.
This is a terrible pun, but you mention it yourself in the book. I mean, it is pretty unusual that someone whose last name is Winter would not have lifelong dreams about going through the Northwest Passage, right?
Well, yes, and I was invited there on a boat by a guy called Noah, and I couldn't say no.
Very good. You meet some obviously interesting people along the way, and I want to ask you, as I read this quote from your book, about someone named Bernadette, who's on your voyage. She was still, you tell us, she told me, grappling with the idea of forgiveness for the profound hurt done to her people by my people. That's why I'm on this boat, she said, to turn my anger into something good. Let's pick this apart. Who's Bernadette?
Bernadette Dean is a Canadian Inuk woman who was on the boat as a cultural ambassador. She was there to tell us about the Northwest Passage, so-called, from her point of view.
Why do you say so-called?
Well, the first thing she told us is that that's a colonial name. There's no such thing. It's only a passage if you don't give a rat's ass about anything along the way and you just want a barrel through for the jewels. So the very name of the place was the first thing she dismantled.
What was the nature of her anger referred to in that quote?
She had been brought up she went to school in the Sir John Franklin High School. She was taught by white teachers who taught her everything from a colonial perspective, and she felt were completely blind to the reality of her life.
So picking up on the last theme, not really feeling at home in her home. Fair to say?
Oh, well, being made to feel as if there was another version of truth than the one she felt in her bones and through her ancestry and through her own observation.
So why did she feel being on that ship with you, going through whatever you want to call it, the Northwest Passage, why did she feel that that would help her constructively channel her anger into something more useful?
I don't know why she felt it would. I just know that she took time to explain her version of things to us, but not in any saccharine or modified way. If she was angry about something, or if she was laughing at something that we all believed through having learned colonial history, she'd really say it like it was. For example, we were on a hike, and we were silhouettes going over a distant rise in single file with all our, hiking gear. And she looked at me and she said, "They look like Franklin's men." And we all know what happened to them.
Didn't end well.
No. There was an Inukshuk that was mischievously built by a passenger. And some people, including some learned people, believed that it was a real Inukshuk. And she would say to me, a real Inukshuk is not all fancy like that. It's just like that over there, one boulder with a smaller boulder on top. That means the fishing grounds are that way. So she would quietly but forcefully tell us her truth as a new layer in the layers of stories that we'd either heard before or were continuing to learn from white historians and academics on the journey.
Let me follow up with another one of these sort of white historian, white geographer kind of questions. One thing I learned in your book is that that part of our country is still uncharted in many ways. How is it possible in 2015, with all of the technological advantages we have, there's still so much uncharted up there by the white person?
I think the question presupposes that the white person has more sense than we actually do, and that technology is more powerful than it actually is. And also, the ice has just begun to melt. So there's a lot of water there, and a lot of the exploration is being done under the water. So, for example, there is a Coast Guard ship, or there was a Coast Guard ship in those waters. But it didn't have Coast Guard staff on it. It was full of geologists who were hired by British Petroleum and the Canadian government and, consortia and governments together, mapping the floor. For what purpose? For the same purpose that Franklin came to his bitter end, finding the good stuff, the monetary stuff, the economic gain for governments and for companies.
You're going to forgive I'm going to ask for your forgiveness in doing this, but there is a picture in this book. Greg, I'm going to show it to you. It's the one on the bottom, right down here. Now, you watched a seal being cut open for its blood and its brain and its heart and its liver, and I want to get a better sense of those experiences that you would have had up there, where people who live in the south of Canada would have said, "You did what? You ate what? Ugh." Help us out with that.
IU Peter and Bernadette Dean together let us know that this food is to be honored. And they did that not through saying this food is to be honored. They did it through the mouth-watering, we're dying to eat it, and please give it to us now. It's so delicious, so good, and so good for you, and we love it. It was a genuine love for that food, so that they would be the first ones to ask the seal hunter who was cutting up the meat, could we please have a bag of blood? Could we please have some brain? Could we please have some liver? And this was something that came naturally to them, and any of the passengers who wanted to share it were given the honor of sharing it, and it was absolutely delicious.
And when you tell people this, who live in the south, how do they react?
I don't think I've mentioned it talking to people. It's in the book. It's one of the things about writing. You don't know how people are reacting when they're home alone with your words. So I don't know.
As delicious as that was, I'll contrast that with this quote you say when you went to Beachy Island, which you say is the bleakest, most desolate piece of land I have ever seen. What was it about the isolation of being there that connected with you?
Beachy Island is where the graves of Franklin's men are. There are 3 graves of Franklin's men. It's gray limestone rubble. It is colorless and lifeless. Nobody in their right mind would set up camp there, let alone spend a whole winter there. It is haunted with the lost, forlorn hopes of English colonial folly, as well as being the burial ground for these men. But it's populated by a living, modern day, full of life, powerful polar bear and his other polar bear families. And we encountered this polar bear. So there's these forces of desolation and powerful natural life together on that island that exist at once. It's a real learning curve to be in that place.
There's a very tough passage in your book where you have some dramatic introspective moments as to, if that bear attacks you, do I have the right to kill it? Can I kill it? Doesn't it have as much obligation and right to live as I do, and I'm on its turf? How'd you work your way through all that?
The ship has gun bearers. IU Peter was one of the gun bearers. She goes everywhere with her, her rubber boots and her gun. And the whole reason for her being there, along with a perimeter of gun bearers, is that these passengers do not get eaten. So when the bear was coming towards us, he was a hungry bear, he was a male bear, and he was coming towards us quite quickly. IU knelt on the stones with her gun like this, and she began singing to the bear, looking it straight in the eyes, while we all scrammed off that island into the Zodiacs and onto our safe quarters in the ship. I later asked IU, what were you singing to the bear? And she said, I was telling the bear that we mean it no harm, that this is his land and not ours, that we're retreating, and to please just calmly wait for us to go and we'll leave you alone. And I just felt that that attitude was wonderful and powerful, but at the same time, yes, there was a moment when I had wondered if the gun bearers would have to shoot the bear, and it would have been our fault. His glorious life would have joined the desperately forlorn and, you know, not glorious life of Franklin's men because of us, and that was the last thing any of us wanted.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left here, and I'm going to ask all of you in our remaining moments about whom you dedicated these books to and why. Plum, you dedicated your book to your children.
Yes.
How come?
Because it's an account of their grandparents and everything that our whole family history.
Have they all read it?
Oh, yes.
Did they make suggestions?
No, but it's interesting. I sent the manuscript to my brothers before I published it, because I told them I would take out anything that they found hurtful or and ask them to help me correct any inaccuracies there. So. And
did they?
Yes, they did.
They asked you to take stuff out?
They didn't ask me to take anything out.
Okay.
But it was interesting because in one of my brothers, who is a historian, wrote things that I sent them each their own copy, by the way, so they wouldn't gang up on me as they passed one copy around. And when his copy came back, it had notes in the margin saying fiction, you know. And I'd write back and say, "What do you mean fiction?" He'd, "Well, you didn't find that in the bottom drawer. You found that in the, you know, trunk or something like that." And I'd say, "That doesn't matter." So his daughter asked to have that copy because she said she was fascinated that that our relationship had been played out in the margins of our comments to each other in the book.
Beautiful. David, you dedicated your book, quote, "For those who never knew." How come?
Well, I think it's part of military necessity when you go into an operation like this, that not everybody understands what the overall objective is. And a lot of times, most military personnel never will. You know, they're playing a very limited role in a larger, you know, symphony, if you will. And also, too, I think it transcended those who were there, and I think it was for all of us who just simply never knew. And really, for me, I guess the driving force behind this was just the quest for the truth after so many years.
Barbara, you dedicated your book to Lise, your younger sister. How come?
Well, Lisa and I are very close. We shared some of the experiences described in the book, and she knows the story from her vantage point, which is not mine, but now I wanted to share it with her and with her children. And it was a testimony to her own strength of character. So.
MG, you dedicated your book to J.K.S. Makoka. Who's that?
Well, he's a young academic in Nairobi who's done some work on my books, but he agreed to accompany me on 2 or 3 trips. We would travel by bus throughout across the country, and he would just sort of leave his job and come to Dar es Salaam, and we would board a bus and travel together. So it was very kind of him, because it's nice to have a companion and also to chat and learn something more about the country and about each other. So I dedicated it to him.
Nice. Kathleen, you dedicated your book to J.D. Who's J.D.?
Jean Dandino. He's my husband. He is a person who is happy if I go and travel the ends of the earth, and he will welcome me home. He's also intensely practical and down to earth. He works with stone and wood and brick. And when he first met me, he used to say about certain people, "Oh, she's a worker," or "he's a worker," and he meant they make things with their hands. So I've gradually trained him to realize that I'm doing work too, damn it. But I dedicated the book to him because he is my home, if home is a sense of belonging.
Lovely. I want to first of all thank all 5 of you for writing these books, because it was a joy reading them. Plum and Barbara, you two, if you haven't already, need to have a conversation about your mothers. Have you had that yet?
No, we just met.
You just met? No kidding. Okay, well, we're happy to bring people together here.
Thanks.
Again, thank you for coming to TVO tonight. It was a great pleasure to meet all of you and to have the joy of reading your books.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.